Give it another minute. Okay, the time is 6 o'clock. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, commissioners, and members of the public. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Historic Preservation Commission meeting of February 8th, 2023, 6 o'clock p.m. Welcome. And before we get going too far here, I just want to bring to the attention of everyone that there is a neighborhood meeting that is going to be part of this overall commission meeting today. And I don't think there's too many people out there who are going to fit the bill today, but if anyone wants to speak at the neighborhood meeting, we ask that you please come up to where Jennifer is sitting and fill out one of the comment cards so that we can make sure we make a record of who is making any comments or at the neighborhood meeting portion. Okay, having said that, let's go ahead and take a roll call. Dr. Lechner, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Vice Chair Fackler?
Here.
Okay, and I know some folks are absent, but I'll call them nonetheless. Commissioner Garrity, Commissioner Garrison, Commissioner Gilbert,
Present.
Commissioner Larson,
Here.
Commissioner Montero,
Here.
Commissioner Kuroka,
Here.
Commissioner Williams. Hello. And Chair Woodson.
Here.
All right. Very good. So we have seven commissioners in attendance.
All right. Number one item is call to audience, persons wishing to address the commission. We do have a comment card submission that was submitted prior to the meeting, and Dr. Lechner is going to read that for the meeting, please.
Yeah, so this was submitted, thank you, Chair. This was submitted in November, and since we haven't had a meeting since October, it's been kind of backlogged until now. So this is from Lisa Ziriak. This is titled Double Butte Cemetery Noise Reduction Solution. This is pretty lengthy here, so I will go through this. So it begins, Dear Commission members, below is the email that I sent to the City Council in May to encourage them to pursue an earthen berm for the east side of the Double Butte Cemetery. This could be a once-in-a-lifetime improvement to the cemetery and could be a relatively low-cost idea if Tempe partners now with ADOT, Arizona Department of Transportation, to make it happen during the Broadway Curve project. I encourage you to support this project and to reach out to the City Council and staff to make it happen now. The foundation consultant has not looked at noise reduction. They are only addressing landscaping. Please consider this idea before it's too late. Thank you, Lisa Ziriak. And so it continues with her letter to council. Dear City Council members, as a member of the Parks Board, Craig Hayton shared with us that the City Council has asked him to provide some input on May 5th about the current condition of the Double Butte Cemetery and possible improvement projects. In January, I shared a specific idea with them and then presented that recommendation to the Parks Board during our March meeting. Craig also encouraged me to share the idea directly with you. The suggestion is to add a landscaped earthen berm on the east side of the Double Butte Cemetery. A landscaped earthen berm would provide both a visual and a noise buffer from the I-10 freeway. The reason that I believe this idea is so timely is because of the current construction to expand I-10 around the Broadway curve. This project will add 2 lanes in each direction and will impact the location of the freeway access road, bringing both closer to the cemetery as well as multiplying the noise from the increased volume of traffic. While this can be addressed after the fact, if the city of Tempe would like to ask ADOT to partner in this project, then now is the time to ask. A noise study was conducted in 2019 to analyze the impact of the expanded freeway design to locations within 500 feet of the freeway. The Double Butte Cemetery was included in the study. Existing noise level data was collected. The report also provided modeled noise levels based on the new freeway and access road configurations. Cemeteries are one of the categories of noise-sensitive receptors. They qualify for the same noise abatement as residences in terms of noise threshold, which is 67 dBA. The noise study is technical in nature and is not easy for a layperson like myself to understand. It does show monitoring locations and noise receiver locations within the cemetery as well as dwelling units. Data is provided for existing noise levels as well as expected levels at build-out. Data shows that the existing levels are near or above the 67 decibel level, while the highest predicted future noise level is over 80 dBA. This is significant because the decibel scale increases exponentially. There are 2 separate thresholds for a location to be considered for noise abatement per federal highway standards. One is the noise level. The other is feasibility and cost effectiveness. If I understand the noise study correctly, the cemetery is quote unquote feasible, not reasonable. So while it qualifies for noise mitigation per the noise level, it doesn't meet the other criteria. So at this time, ADOT has no plans to add a cement wall or earth berm as a noise barrier along the eastern edge of the cemetery. This is unfortunate because ADOT recently built a new cement wall for the Phoenix Memorial Park and Mortuary in North Phoenix, just north of the 101, between Central Avenue and 3rd Avenue as part of expanding the 101 freeway in that area. However, just because ADOT is not going to address the noise issue does not mean that the city of Tempe can't pursue it. I would recommend a landscape earthen berm due to the cost of constructing a cement wall. A cemetery is supposed to be a place of peace and calm that allows for quiet reflection. This is not currently possible at the eastern end and the historical section of the cemetery, and it is only going to get worse. A landscape berm would provide both a noise and visual barrier from the I-10 freeway. In fact, the cemetery currently has a large amount of dirt, I'm guessing for burials, as well as a large amount of dead grass. As a test, I stood near these mounds in the cemetery on Sunday. It was noticeably quieter. This is an opportunity for a once-in-a-lifetime significant improvement to the Double Butte Cemetery. ADOT has recently raised, removed vegetation, and leveled off the land between the eastern boundary of the cemetery and the I-10 access road. I'm not sure what ADOT plans for this area, but it would be the perfect location for the earthen berm, or the berm could straddle their land in the cemetery. If ADOT would provide the dirt, the city could shape it and landscape it, perhaps even working with ASU land design students. The Parks Board and staff could work with our urban forester to add trees to this area, as well as the Desert Commission for ideas for plants. Perhaps ADOT would let us tie in to their water system if it's not too difficult to run lines to this area from the cemetery system. Those are just a few thoughts that come to mind. And then she concludes in her final paragraph, the historic section of the cemetery is in dire need of attention. I believe the first place to start is with a noise and visual barrier on the east side that will bring the peace, quiet, and tranquility that you'd expect to find in a cemetery. Our founders and leaders are in the historic section of the cemetery, including Charles and Carl Hayden. You can learn a lot about a city by the way they honor their history. It's challenging to spend money on a cemetery, but it's the right thing to do. Through partnerships, ADOT, the Anaheim Angels, Marriott at Tempe Buttes, ASU, and more, we can make this happen. Let's invest in a barrier on the east side of Double Butte Cemetery. Thanks for your consideration, Lisa Ziriak. End of comment.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lechner. Do we offer opportunities for comment, or is this just a public.
It's something we could talk about on a future agenda, absolutely, but since it's not agendized, we'll move on at this point.
Okay, very well. Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 2, approval of October 12th, 2022 meeting minutes. Commissioners, you've got a copy of the draft minutes in your packet. Does anyone have any comments or corrections?
This is Commissioner Larson. I have 2.
Yes, Commissioner.
On page 3, the bottom of page 3, third from the last paragraph, the last sentence of this paragraph says Vice Chair Woodson stated that he agrees with Commissioner Montero's sentiment. And the vice chair is Vice Chair Fackler. The chair is Chair Woodson. I cannot remember who agreed with Commissioner Montero's sentiment at that time. And so I'm not sure who that would be referring to regarding the subject of that sentence.
That's a good question. I do believe that was me. And just kind of rereading that paragraph kind of goes with the flow there. I think that was
Yeah.
me.
I think that was you, yeah. Well, we can also check the recording too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
so.
Okay, thank you. Did you have another one?
Yeah, same error on the first sentence of the last paragraph at the bottom of page 3, Vice Chair Woodson. I do recall that this was Chair Woodson making these comments. However, I recognize my memory may not be quite that accurate, but I believe it was Chair Woodson that was making these statements in this next paragraph.
I believe that is correct too.
Sorry, we weren't trying to demote you, I assure you.
Right, unless you're trying to give me double duties here, okay?
Or elevate Vice Chair Fackler. So, yeah,
Okay.
we'll get those corrected. Sure.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Any other?
No, thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have comments?
I have one. This is Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
On the same page 3 at the top, the paragraph starting with Dr. Lechner, there's a comma instead of a period at doctor. That's all.
Commissioner Williams should be our technical editor for sure. Okay, thank you. All right, any other comments or edits for the minutes?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Vice Chair.
I move approval of the minutes as amended, 3 amendments being included.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a vote.
All right, Vice Chair Fackler,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilbert, oh, you might be muted there, Commissioner Gilbert.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Larson,
Aye.
Commissioner Montero. Oh, can you say
Sorry.
that again?
Aye. Sorry about that.
No problem, thank you. Commissioner Kuroka.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Williams
Aye.
and Chair Woodson.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, ayes have it, 7-0.
Thank you. Okay, approval of agenda. Commissioners, are there any comments of any kind on the agenda, or can I just go ahead and make a motion to approve? Hearing none, I'll just move to approve the agenda. I don't think we need to take a vote on that.
Agreed.
All right, very well. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 4, This is the neighborhood meeting portion regarding a request for a zoning map amendment from R1-6 zoning district to R1-6 with a historic overlay designation for the McCamey Riggs house property located at 135 West Bonita Way. Mark Vinson, who I see is here, is applying on behalf of the property owner, Patricia Riggs, and he will facilitate the neighborhood meeting. Good evening, Mr. Vinson. Thank you for being here.
Let's just start on page 1, if we could, of the text instead.
And just one more reminder, if there's anyone out there that's wanting to make comments today on this, that they just fill out a comment card as well. Okay, thank you. Proceed, please.
Good to go. Good evening, commissioners and staff. It's a pleasure to be here before you this evening. My name is Mark Vinson. I'm an architect with expertise in historic preservation, and I've been retained by the property owner at 135 East Bonita Way, Patricia Riggs, to represent her in this designation process. Myself, I reside at 13910 East Hawknest Road, Maricopa County, Arizona. You may have heard of us. We're the neighborhood with no water, but that's a different story. But speaking of neighborhoods, this case before you this evening, the McCamey Riggs house, and we'll get into it as to why it has that name, is located in the University Estates neighborhood in Tempe, basically the north and east of Mill and Broadway, and once known as Professor's Row because so many ASU professors lived there, including Coach Bill Kajikawa and others. It's a lovely neighborhood. I'm very envious of both the property owner that I represent tonight, as well as many others in the neighborhood for the beauty and the historic character of the neighborhood. So speaking of historic character, that's why we're here tonight. And I'll just hit a few highlights from the report, which is, I assume that's been available online if someone wants to access that and read that. So I'm not going to go into all the verbiage, but again, just hit the highlights. The McCamey Riggs house is a single-story ranch-style, single-family dwelling constructed in 1949 through 1950 as part of the earliest development of the new University Estates subdivision. The house was designed and built by R. Lloyd Williams, a Tempe designer builder who resided nearby, where he had designed and built his own home. The original property owners for whom the house was designed and built were Harvey and Marge McCamey, who were prominent Tempeans of the day. The McCameys remained in this home until Harvey's death in 1979, followed by Marge's passing in 1980. Since the McCameys had no children, the property was inherited by distant nieces and nephews who put the property up for sale, at which point Ms. Riggs purchased the property. So that was 1981, and she has resided there since. Going back to the University Estates subdivision, again, that was platted in 1949. It consists of relatively large, for that day, single-story, single-family ranch-style houses, either of red brick or a concrete block construction, large flood-irrigated lots, curvilinear street plan, straight 1 or 2 car width driveways, rolled curbs and gutters throughout. The McCameys took out a mortgage for their new home in University Estates in February 1950, having previously resided at 33 State Street, which is now University Drive. The house R. Lloyd Williams designed and built for them was in the early mid-period of the ranch style, vaguely California ranch in appearance, with details such as exposed painted 8x4x16 concrete block walls, low sloping double pitched roof forms, exposed rafter tails and steel casement windows. Exposed redwood sheathing and beams were used for the porch roof, and interiors featured lath and plaster walls with coved ceilings, some featuring insets with geometric patterns, and exposed red stained polished concrete floors. A roof mounted evaporative air conditioner with central ductwork kept the home cool. This was later replaced by standard air conditioning refrigeration in 1964. So we'll get into some views of the house shortly, but I'll just state that the overall composition when viewed from the street consisted of a front porch and a rectangular living space. Actually, let's go ahead and go to that, the floor plan sheet now. There we go. So there's a front porch, rectangular living space covered by a double-pitched roof oriented parallel to the street, stepping down over the carport at the west end, and a bedroom wing with a gable roof end perpendicular to the street at the east. The kitchen is oriented to the rear, as is a breakfast nook. 2 modest additions were made to the rear by the McKemmies, and later additions, including a 2-story bedroom storage wing with basement to accommodate her mother, have also been made to the rear by current owner, Ms. Riggs, resulting in the current total area of 2,990 square feet. And just a word about the McKemmies. There's a lot of detail on their background, but I think it could be said that together with Grady Gamage, it's a fair observation that Harvey McKemmy is the most beloved and revered educator in Tempe history. As a teacher, principal, and superintendent, as well as community volunteer, he touched the lives of thousands of Tempe children. All right, let's talk about the house itself. And what we see here is a floor plan, basically just an outline plan of the house. So we see the original configuration of the house, the 1949-1950 configuration with the original carport still intact, which is kind of remarkable because usually the first thing that happens on homes from this period is that the carport gets enclosed to form an additional living space. But in this case, the front of the house, the original roof line and everything is all intact. You see the additions on the back, a couple made by the McKemmies, one shortly after they took ownership of the home after it was constructed. Another one which was then removed and replaced by Ms. Riggs, and then, then the 2-story addition in 1998, 1999. Okay, go to the next slide. So here we see the neighborhood, the 1949 aerial showing nothing there. Property that was apparently owned by the Apley family. And then by 1951, now we see that there are several homes that are either completed or under construction. And the red dot indicates the subject property. The house, I think 3 houses to the west of the subject property was the Apley family's house. So it was the first house built in the subdivision. And the McKemmy house was among the first 4. Okay, next. I'm sorry?
The address of the first house is 127.
That I do not know. The first house on the street? I don't know. That sounds about right. That sounds about what it would be. Here a copy of the plat map. The red dot migrated there just a little bit. I don't know what happened. So yeah, it's at least 1 or 2 properties to the right, to the west there. But anyway, that's okay. Here you get an idea of the curvilinear street plan, the commercial tract that was left out on the southwest corner. And go to the next slide. Here we see the subject property. We see the home facing Bonita Way. Again, the original roof line with the additions at the rear. And we see the large flood irrigated lot, which is still intact, and several of the original plantings by the McKemmies still intact as well. Okay, next slide. All right, here we get the street view of the home. And again, we see the original roof line. The porch has not been filled in. The carport has not been filled in. All original, except what we do see, of course, is the 2-story addition at the rear, which can be seen from the street. I would tend to classify that as compatible yet distinct, which is exactly the way you would approach an addition to an historic property. Now, there are some other features that the lower slide points out. These little filigree elements and the balustrade at the porch, as well as I think the next slide will show some shutters that are not original. Those were added in 1998, I believe. They are all, I looked at those, they're all removable, and the property owner would be amenable to removing them if that was a contingent factor in the nomination. We see the concrete block, the painted concrete block. Okay, next. the east side of the home. So there are some minor areas that still have the original wood shiplap siding. And the rear of the house, which is the most altered, where we see the two-story addition and the other one-story addition. Next slide. Interior, remarkable that it's been preserved as it is with the original, much of the original lath and plaster work intact. Here you see the coved ceilings. Next slide. And again, just highlighting the flood irrigation still intact, some of the original major plantings by the McKimmys still intact. And last slide is just a little highlight of Harvey McKimmy, showing his significance in Tempe, school named after him, streets named after him, a very significant individual. Let's back it up to those street views of the home right there. Yep. And what I wanted to point out at this juncture is a summary of the integrity of the home. So integrity could be defined as the ability of a property to convey its significance. So whatever was significant about the property, does it still convey that? Can you still perceive what was significant about the property? So, and a good rule of thumb is if the original owners or builders were to come back and see it today, would they recognize it? And so that's kind of a rule of thumb there. But in terms of summarizing the integrity, the location, the house occupies its original site. The design, the house and property retain original design characteristics, even though there have been some additions. Setting, with its mature flood irrigated landscape and assortment of early mid-ranch style homes, the University Estates neighborhood retains much of its original character, although many individual houses have been altered to greater and lesser degrees. Workmanship, the original workmanship is evident in the exposed concrete block walls, exposed rafter tails, and interior plaster on the walls and coved ceilings. Feeling, the building and site convey a strong feeling of the 1950s in architectural design and landscape. Visible alterations are either removable or set back and compatible, yet distinct. And association, the building's design strongly conveys its associations with the historical context of Harvey and Marge McKimmy and R. Lloyd Williams, as well as with post-World War II development in Tempe and the ranch house architectural type and style, which we kind of skipped over all of that that's in the report, but maybe interesting reading if anyone would like to go back and take advantage of that. So finally, the statement of significance. What is really significant about this? And this criteria is based on National Register criteria, although we're only seeking Tempe designation this evening, but still just using that as a guide, looking at criteria A. The property is associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of Tempe history, and that's the post-World War II development period. Criteria B, the property is associated with the lives of persons significant in Tempe history, that being Harvey and Marge McKimmy. And C, the property embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction, or represents the work of a master, or so on and so on. And that being the early to mid-ranch style. We do not see significance under criteria D, since there's no evidence of any archaeological remains on property. With that, I'm happy to answer questions, or I guess we're not taking questions from the commission tonight, or are we?
We are.
It's part of the
maybe
neighborhood.
just first open it up if there's gentlemen in the audience or,
Sure.
or anybody who might be listening offline. Open it up to the neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Vinson. Okay, thank you. All right, so I guess Mark, you will be facilitating the Q&A. Is that correct, how this works? Or we just want to see if there's comments and then go from there?
I'm happy to do
Okay.
that.
Okay. So I do have one online comment form here, if we want to start with that.
Okay.
citizen request form from John Austin in, oh, I'm sorry, is this from the, oh, I apologize, my apology. Mr. Austin would like to speak on this case, so would you like to come forward and have?
I live across the street from this property at 130 Bonita. And I'm not in favor of giving this historic zoning. One reason is that there are a lot of historic buildings in Tempe, and a lot of them are really beautiful and really obviously have historical, architectural merit that warrants them being historic buildings. This place is not so exciting architecturally. It's more like a box with the front porch and a two-story box added onto the back. So it really, if you're standing in front of the property, it's not a beautiful architectural site. And I think it would be better for the neighborhood and better for property values if some future owner were allowed to change that and to make it more architecturally appealing. So that's my basic objection to providing this status. Also, I think that Tempe has a lot of properties in our neighborhood that have been changed, and I think that a lot of them have been changed really for the better. If you see a lot of the places around Tempe where people have done really exciting things with these old houses, it makes the neighborhood much more interesting. So I think that that basically sums up my objection to the historic zoning for this property. And I'll answer any questions anybody has.
Okay, well, thank you for your comment. And at this point, I believe that this is just, I mean, just to make it clear, the commission is not taking any action on this item tonight. We're simply facilitating the neighborhood meeting portion. The item will come back to us at a later date when there's another step in the formal sequence of the application process. So today we're here simply to facilitate the meeting, but I'm not sure if Mr. Vincent or Dr. Lechner, if there's anything you all need any additional information in response to Mr. Austin that we need to provide at this time, or is this just accepting the comment?
We're just accepting the comment.
Very good. Okay, well, thank you again, Mr. Austin, for attending and bringing your information. I don't see anyone else in the audience, but Jennifer, do we have an online attendee that wishes to speak? Yes, so for the listeners, Barbara Simons. Ms. Simons, if you can hear me, we're just going to check to ask, are you wishing to make any statement in regard to the meeting at this item?
Actually, not at this time. I somehow unmuted my microphone. It was not intentional, but I may have comment at a further point in the process.
Very good, thank you. And I see we have Brenda Abney. Oh, that's from the museum. I'm sorry. I'm just going down the list here. And then Dwayne DeVecchio. Is this someone else in line to make a comment tonight?
I do not have a comment.
Okay, thank you. And Tara Bookspan, are you wishing to make a comment on the item? I'll take that as a no. And I see Mr. Linoff is on the meeting tonight. I'm not sure if he's just listening or if he wishes to make a comment. Mr. Linoff, do you wish to make any comments, or are you just listening to the meeting tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm listening to the meeting, but hearing Mr. Vinson's analysis of the property, I think it does merit receiving designation.
Okay, thank you. All right, commissioners, does anyone have any questions or comments for Mr. Vinson?
Chair, I do.
Commissioner?
Are there any other properties in the University Estates that have a historic overlay zoning?
Not to my knowledge. No.
No, I don't believe so. This would be the first.
And do we have any idea when the structural brick was painted on the exterior of the home?
Probably from day one.
Did they paint them when they were first building it?
Typical that concrete block was never intended to not be painted. It's only a relatively modern innovation where people are coming back and sandblasting and exposing the block.
Okay, no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners' questions or comments?
Mr. Vinson, just a quick question related to significance. Having done your study and whatnot, is the architecture of the house significant, this ranch style, or is it the personality associated with this house that is the most significant?
Most significant, yes, is the personality associated with the home.
Okay.
The architectural significance is just that it is an example of a type that flourished in Tempe at that particular point in time. And so it is a remaining example of that type, but it is not necessarily something above and beyond what other homes would be during that period.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, I have a couple of questions for you, Mark, if I may. So just to be clear, so the University Estates neighborhood is not a historic neighborhood district. It doesn't have an official designation, correct?
Correct. No official designation.
Okay. And is there any current proposal to do that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Does the owner intend to also seek a listing on the National Register?
I've not heard that. The owner's not expressed that interest.
Okay. And so just to kind of pursue what Vice Chair was asking about being an example of this particular type of ranch-style house, mid-century, are there any other homes in Tempe that you're aware of on the Tempe Register that are similar style or age?
One great example would be the Roosevelt Edition Historic District. So the entire neighborhood on Roosevelt Street, just to the east of Farmer Avenue. So they're all homes of very similar construction and time period.
Okay.
And that is on the Tempe Register.
That's on the register,
Yes.
okay. And are there individual homes in that district that are on the register as well, or is just the neighborhood itself is on the register?
Just that entire neighborhood.
Okay.
And then there are individual homes in the what's commonly known as the Maple Ash neighborhood that would also fit the similar criteria to this home.
Okay.
That I believe a few of them are on the register as well. But again,
Okay.
no district in that area.
So it would be fair to say that there are already some homes of a similar style and age that are already on the Tempe Register, just, as far as like addressing particular areas if we're looking at it from that point of
Sure.
view.
That would be correct to say, although I don't, to my knowledge, I'm not aware of any that have the association with, as historic, a significant person like this one does.
Yes, absolutely. That would clearly be a pretty important area of significance. The two-story addition in the back, that was what year?
That was 1998.
1998. I'm not sure, was there a review process that the commission at the time went through? Was that reviewed at the time? I mean, I know it's not a historic neighborhood or anything. Did that just go through the regular permitting process?
They got a building permit. That was it.
Okay.
Because single-family residents didn't go through design review, and there was no historic designation, so there was no review by historic preservation at that time.
To your knowledge, did Ms. Riggs, intentionally build it with, as you mentioned, it's separate and distinct, but similar, compatible style? I think, is that how you, did she consciously do it that way, or did it just happen to?
I believe so. That was the intent, was to make it compatible, yet it's distinct enough that, you can tell what was built in 1949 and what was built in 1998.
Okay, very good. And last question, and I'm not sure if you know about this, but, well, I'm sure you're aware, the sort of Tempe neighborhoods, character area studies that have been done over the last 10, 20 years, and I know there's one for the Northwest neighborhoods, which I'm fairly sure this is a part of. Is there anything in that character area study or any of those kind of neighborhood studies that kind of provides a framework for trying to or attempting to get individual homes listed like this on the register? Or is there any kind of aspect of those studies that also I'm just sort of thinking in terms of what might lend support to this particular designation?
Well, the character area plans do point out the value to the community of these, flood irrigated neighborhoods, being the lungs of the community, so to speak, and the preservation of the distinctive characteristics of those neighborhoods as being vital to the preservation of community identity. They don't necessarily, specifically target individual properties to that extent, but in general terms, it would tend to speak towards, favoring designation of properties.
Okay. Yes.
I can also add to this, if it's okay.
Yes, please.
So in all the character area plans, like Mr. Benson talked about, we do have like a historic preservation section. And there is like a general encourage if it's a district or different properties, to either, of course, encourage them to preserve the way it is if it's historic. And if people qualify, and if they want to kind of go for a registration of the historic properties, to do that. So that's something that's included in that character area plan also, but that's generic, not for a particular building.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay, well, good. Those were my questions. So I guess at this point, just one more time, any other questions or comments from commissioners or anyone else?
Chair, I do have another follow-up question, if I may.
Yes, please.
What's the manner of construction of the two-story addition in the rear?
It is a concrete block at the lower level and frame on the upper level, wood frame.
How high does the concrete block go?
8 feet.
And is it the similar kind of block as the rest of the house?
Yes, matches the 8 by 4 by 16.
And then above that, is
the shiplap wood siding that also matches the original.
With framing, it's wood frame,
Lower
like
wood frame, yes.
Stud
Yep.
frame. And that addition includes a basement, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, it does.
So it's essentially, it's 2 stories plus a basement.
Correct.
Okay.
That was for the owner's mother, as well as storage.
Does that addition effectively double the size of the livable area?
Comes close to it. There's the other addition also on the east rear, and those together double the original square footage.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Okay, well, I think that'll bring to an end comments and questions. So at this point, Dr. Lechner, want to
Yeah, I think
round this out?
I think we can conclude that, or declare the neighborhood meeting concluded for 135 East Bonita Way. So thank you to Mark Vinson for that presentation. Thank you to our comments, both here in person and also online, and as well as from our commissioners. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. And then Dr. Lechner, could you just maybe explain what will be the process then after tonight with this property?
Right. So at this point, after the neighborhood meeting, there will begin the kind of the commission review process for this zoning map amendment. Because again, the zoning map amendment is essentially the mechanism by which a property is designated in the Tempe Historic Property Register. So there's per city code, there has to be at least 30 days between the neighborhood meeting and the first commission meeting, which would be the Historic Preservation Commission. So there is not 30 days between now and the potential March HPC meeting. So action on this item would be taken, and in terms of action, I'm referring to whether to recommend this item for approval. That would occur not in March, but at an April HPC meeting. And then if HPC were to recommend approval, it would then go on to the Development Review Commission meeting. That meeting would be in May. And then there would, from there, it would, if approved, it would go on to two city council meetings, both held in June. The first city council meeting would just be an introductory hearing and just to kind of introduce the item. And then the second meeting would be where the decision on the zoning map amendment would actually be made by mayor and council. So if that is approved at that second council meeting, then zoning map amendment would then 30 days hence go into effect. And then for the historic overlay, and then the property would be the, I believe, 54th addition to the Tempe Historic Property Register.
Okay, thank you for explaining the process. All right, very well. Then, Mr. Vinson, perhaps we will see you here again in April, or?
Perhaps as a disembodied voice.
Yes, yes, very good. Okay, thank you. Okay, agenda item 5, update on the Gonzalez Martinez house property. I think Dr. Lechner, you'll give the update.
I will. Thank you very much, Chair. So I just wanted to, just give you a few details, some of which I provided to you in a memo, some of which is new information. So first of all, first bit of good news, AZ State Parks and Trails awarded the city of Tempe $150,000 Heritage Fund Historic Preservation Grant for rehabilitation and repair of the Gonzalez Martinez house. So that will serve as a match for the city's kind of existing CIP funding commitment to rehabilitation of the site. Kind of the next point, the longer point that I'll make is that on January 11th, 2023, the city issued a request for qualifications for a mixed-use redevelopment project on a previously state-owned parcel, as well as the city-owned parcel directly to its east, on which the Gonzalez Martinez house sits. And so I included in the packet for this evening that a copy of that RFQ. The RFQ was issued after First and Farmer LLC, which is an entity you may be familiar with. It's associated with a lot of ongoing redevelopment activities along Farmer Avenue. Purchased the state-owned parcel, and they made that purchase at a public auction on November 22nd, 2022 for $2.75 million after submitting the loan bid at an online state lands auction. So the RFQ, as you saw from reading it, called for preservation of the home and for the successful developer to provide the city with a facade conservation easement on the Gonzalez Martinez house. So the developer their intention is to purchase the city-owned parcel as well, including the Gonzalez Martinez house, and to redevelop the combined parcels. The kind of full plan for that site is not, has not been developed at this point. There has been talk by the developer of building, high-rise, living community there. The one response that was received was from the attorney Charles Huelmantel. He's representing First and Farmer LLC, which has a few partners as well. So the item will go before council on February 16th, requesting approval to enter into negotiations with First and Farmer LLC to redevelop the site. Per usual, if approved to move forward, a lot of specifics would have to be worked out in the development agreement on a whole range of issues, including the developer's plans for ensuring the Gonzalez Martinez house's rehabilitation, which they have committed to. For example, on the historic preservation side, the developers already enlisted Robert or Bob Graham of Motley Design Group to assess the current condition of the home. Mr. Graham previously completed the 2017 building condition assessment report for the city on the house. So he's very knowledgeable about the property. He's literally about the best person they could have asked, I think. So anyway, so that will be ongoing, and I will be encouraging the developer to bring their plans before HPC for input. So this was, I'll just say, it was a little bit of a surprise to learn that this developer has purchased this parcel next to the Gonzalez Martinez house parcel, since the city had kind of spoken for a long time of trying to acquire it. That didn't happen, but I am optimistic about the opportunity that we have here, as well as what the developer has said about their commitment to preserving the house and not only just preserving it, but rehabilitating it. So, we're still kind of in very early days of the process, but I just wanted to make sure, since we've talked about this quite a bit at the commission recently, the property itself, wanted to let you know kind of what's happening with it currently. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have and that I'm able to address.
Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair.
Dr. Lechner, two questions. If you just refer to the site map that on Appendix A and the magenta area that the city owns there. There is a water line, and I can't remember the name of it, City of Phoenix. I know the size of it, 96 inch. So it's damn near big enough to drive pickup through. It runs through, and it was relocated to run through Tempe Beach Park and then the site where the Pennysaver is. And it runs right along that angled berm. So really the north 1/3 of the city's ownership here is berm, railroad right-of-way, street right-of-ways, that sort of thing. So I'm assuming that probably will not be included in the final development plan unless he's going to be a magic bridge over that line.
Yeah.
Incidentally, which the city of Phoenix would probably not allow, not without a whole lot of money. The other question I have for you and for comment is that this shows additional area to be included in the RFQ south of First Street at the southeast corner of First and Farmer. Is that area in the proposed area for the negotiation of development agreement?
Yes, I mean, yes, that's my understanding that, yeah, because that was also previously technically state land that kind of went along with that parcel that
So
was
the
purchased at
developer
auction.
already owns a piece of that?
I don't know that they had already owned a piece of it. I believe that they had had state permission to use it at this. So they're making use of it at this point. And so, yeah, but I believe it would be part of what they purchased was that land is included in it. To your first question, yeah, it's a very good point, Vice Chair Fagler. I haven't heard that portion come up for discussion. Yeah, I think that's just kind of the, if you know that property, the kind of the fenced in area, that we're discussing, that includes the Gonzalez Martinez house, as well as that western previously state-owned parcel. I think that's really primarily what they're looking to develop on. So yeah, I don't know that. Are you talking about kind of the area like to kind of the north of the fence? Yeah, I haven't heard any discussions about them developing on that. But I couldn't, and it's possible I'm not privy to that either at this point, but yeah.
Because the water line is there as one thing, but it's also,
Yeah.
all of that land is in the floodplain.
Right.
And I'll be real interested to see the development plan on this.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that he paid $2.5 million for that piece of property.
2.75. Yeah.
Dr. Lechner, so if I could ask, and maybe others here with the city, how did this happen, that this state-owned parcel just all of a sudden got purchased? I mean, the city was already interested in that, correct? I mean, so what happened with the state? Are they just like thumbing their nose at the city with this, or they just wanted to get as much money as possible, so they didn't really entertain the city's desires? I mean, what happened there?
Well, it's a little bit hard to say, and that was kind of being, I think something that the economic development department had been monitoring. I think there was some issue perhaps with just perhaps pulling the money together, because that's a significant amount of money to kind of pull together. But other than that, I honestly can't say for sure. Why the decision wasn't made to purchase it. But I can only say that it was only fairly well after the fact that I learned about the auction. But apparently there were people within the city that were aware that the auction was happening, and there was just a decision not to make a bid on the property.
Could you clarify what you mean by the option? What option?
Oh, the auction.
Auction.
Sorry, my apologies.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
sorry.
the auction. Yeah.
So the state actually held an auction.
A public auction. Yeah. Well, it was in public,
Wow.
but do keep in mind that public auctions are publicly advertised.
Sure.
They're over multiple weeks. And I forget what it is, the publication that publishes that. So I mean, the information was out. The information was out there. But yeah, the city decided not to purchase that.
Well, but I mean, just to kind of drive this point a little further.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's not like the city didn't know that this property has been there since 1880, and that this was another major important part. I mean, there's already been money put into this. So, I mean, I think this might be something that might bear some asking some questions some further. I mean, the state didn't have to do the auction at a certain time, and I mean, they probably weren't requiring a $2.75 million offer on it. So, this just sounds kind of weird, because after all this discussion we had last year and all these things sounded like they were going pretty well, now we've got this, and now the city's looking to sell the property that they own with the house on it. And so what guarantees are there going to be that the property, the building, is going to be preserved? I mean, that I don't like the way this is going. Personally.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look in the RFQ, the city is requiring a preservation of the building, is requiring that the developer provide the city with a facade conservation easement on the building, which means that they can't demolish it.
Well, that's what it says, but I mean, there's no agreement yet. You don't even have a developer yet, so.
Well,
I mean, you
right.
see what I'm saying? So, I mean.
Yeah,
so,
but sure, go ahead, I'm sorry. Yeah.
But you're saying that the properties, that's part of the property is still city-owned, right?
That the Gonzalez Martinez house sits
Yeah.
on? Yes, yeah, it's still currently.
So does the and maybe this is just my ignorance of the RFQ, but is the city going to sell their part of the property as part of this deal to a
Correct.
developer?
Correct. Yeah, that's what would happen.
So what, and again, I mean, I see Ryan's not here. I mean, it just, to me, it just sounds a little fishy. I mean, what legal, I mean, how does the city and this commission, for that matter, I mean, how do we get guarantees, so to speak, legally that they can't just purchase the property and end up just basically doing what they want?
Well, that would be in the development agreement. So they would be working out of the development agreement with our economic development department. It's something that I would be consulted on, as I've been with various discussions about this so far, since the RFQ went out, to ensure that those provisions were deal points in the development agreement. So, that's a legally binding, obligation, that's approved by the council. So, yeah, I mean, certainly anybody can get a bulldozer and knock over a building, right? But I mean, but I don't envision that happening once you have a deal in place that specifically mandates against doing that. And Charles Humantle is a an attorney who does a lot of real estate law in the city, or a lot of real estate transactions in the city. I don't envision any kind of project that he's associated with doing something like that. So.
Well, I just want to express my discontent on this because not
Yeah, sure.
only is this like out of the blue, I mean, this happened in the space between our last meeting that we actually met.
Yeah.
Also, we didn't get a chance to review this RFQ. We got to review the RFQ for the Hayden Flour Mill. I mean, now granted, we didn't necessarily have any power to, demand changes or anything, but we did get to review it, and
Yeah.
you got to review it. So how did all this, I mean, I don't like this. I mean, I'm just going to say it. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and yeah, if everything goes, as you're suggesting, I mean, maybe that's all going to work out just fine. But it just seems a little strange to me that like when I started sitting on this commission, I mean, there wasn't even any discussion about this property being improved and rehabilitated. And then all of a sudden last year that seemed to happening, and there was some money allocated, and now we're here. So this just doesn't seem to be rolling in the direction that seems like it's being thoughtfully considered by the people, certainly not on the commission, since we are just now hearing about it. So you hear what I'm saying? So I am lodging my disapproval of the way this is moving, and I would just like to make sure that you and whoever else is just making sure that whoever's making decisions on this, make sure that that's going to be a provision that is actually abided by, and that we have the opportunity to also comment on it moving forward.
Yeah, and I was the person who edited and made sure those provisions were in the RFQ. The RFQ was fast-tracked, so there was not an option to bring it before Historic Preservation Commission. I agree that would have been ideal, but
I'm just going to call bunk on that. That they didn't have the time to do it between January 11th and now. Give me a break.
Okay, Chair. I'm your friend. Remember that. But yeah,
No, that wasn't directed to you. It's directed by the people who are making that decision, who are telling you that. I mean, that's.
No, well, I'm not saying people told me that. I'm just saying when the decision was made to finalize the RFQ and send it out, there was about, I believe there was about 2 weeks in between the issuance of the RFQ and the deadline for the RFQ. So I'm just saying that in that situation, there was not I'm not defending, like, I understand what you're saying, but I'm
But-
saying that in 2 weeks, I could not pull together a commission meeting and have them review it or have a presentation by the developer or what have you, so.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that you didn't have control, but I mean, you understand how, I mean, in fact, I think you even just said that it came as a surprise that the property
Yeah,
was even
absol-
sold.
Absolutely.
And
I was very
and
surprised
then
by it.
within how long? Like 24 hours you got, because I mean, that was January 11th that happened and we're meeting on February 8th.
Mhm.
I mean, this seems very odd to me.
Okay, I understand.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
maybe I can give a little different perspective, having gone through the development agreement process many, many times for the city of Tempe. There's another way to look at this. The fact that the property was bought out from underneath the city, I don't necessarily think that was probably the case. I think that there may be a conscious decision here of the city saying, let's go ahead and let the developer for 2.75 million buy a piece that is essentially undevelopable without ours. He just created, quite frankly, even for the usable portion of the city of Tempe's land, a $3 million value for the city's land. It's a pretty big negotiation chip when it comes to, and quite frankly, I'm stunned at those values because even watching some of the land values that have occurred in the last 5 years, there's on a per square foot cost, there's nothing that can even approach that. But I think that this may have actually improved the city's bargaining position, especially as it relates to the historic structure, because I think that this is, the land of value is 200% of what it probably ought to be. It gives the city quite a chunk to work with to ensure that this house gets rehabilitated as part of this overall project. It was always going to be a difficult project unless it went the other route, in which the true land value came forward just because of not being able to truly develop this site with any kind of intensity. Now that the price of this land has been established at, let's say, the overall site somewhere between $5 and $6 million. Now, the development that will have to take place on this in order for that to move forward is going to be significant. It's not going to be some simple low-rise with surface parking. It's going to be a high-rise, mid-rise parking structure included. I'll be real curious to see this plan. It's going to be extremely difficult, and it will be much like the development that we reviewed adjacent to the Ash Avenue Bridge approach. It's going to take that kind of development in order to move forward on this piece, let alone the fact that the Gonzalez house is sitting there and is going to occupy at least a quarter of the land that the developer will be getting from the city, assuming that deal could be negotiated. But I don't know whether this was a strategic opportunity that the developer took advantage of, or it's a major blunder. But one way or the other, he's definitely improved the city's bargaining position as this thing moves forward. It's just Zach, you're gonna have to be on top of this all the time. You've got to be in the loop to ensure that this structure is on the table for rehabilitation, restoration, whatever level we can get with this. But, and I hope that it has a reuse. And I hope that it's a reuse that will give it an economic value, that it can continue to be preserved into the future. We don't need another museum that becomes a sinkhole for the city's budget in order to maintain it. We need something that has an economic vitality to it on an ongoing. And that's just me. I'm not speaking for the commission in any way. But I just see this development, although it's unfortunate that it took place in the timetable that it did, essentially when nobody was watching. I think we could consider it an opportunity as long as we are very diligent as this moves forward in the preservation of this house.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, yeah, frankly, I mean, my first response was when I heard about this is like, oh, that's not good. But when I thought about it for a second, I thought, actually, you know, this could, like you're saying, be an actual opportunity. Because yeah, if the city purchases the property, it pays an incredible amount of money for the property, for that state-owned parcel. Then it's got to figure out what the heck to do with it. They just got to carry through with the project. This way, if you have a development agreement in which the developer gifts the city or provides the city with a facade conservation easement, potentially, especially if the developer is going to be asking for, you know, tax breaks in the form of a giblet or something like that, there's going to have to be some type of public benefit that that comes back to the city. So there's a potential for a requirement, and I've spoken with economic development about this, you know, for that developer to have to kick in additional funding for the preservation of the home. So again, that's not worked out yet, but it's an opportunity. There's also the possibility that, like with the Hayden House, because you may remember, you know, the Hayden House was not always owned by the city. It was gifted back to the city by the developer under the points of the development agreement. So development agreement is not just some kind of like paper thin, you know, whatever, you know, it's a deal. And developer backs would have a development agreement. I mean, they ruin their reputation and ruin their business. So I'm not really too worried about that, you know, portion of it. So I do see it as potentially an opportunity. Is it, you know, what I had expected when I had the conversation with you all, you know, some months back when we started talking more intensely about the Gonzalez Martinez house? Yeah, absolutely not. It wasn't what I anticipated. But, you know, I think that, you know, whatever the, you know, reasoning behind the decision was, and the thing that you have to understand is in the Historic Preservation Office, you know, I'm one person, I'm one office. I'm not always privy to these decisions, and sometimes it would be, you know, and that's just how bureaucracy operates. But I think in this case, it's not a sky is falling situation. In fact, I think there's a lot of potential for what could happen moving forward. So to speak to Vice Fackler's point about will I be monitoring it? Yeah, I assure you I'll be monitoring it. I think about the Gonzalez Martinez house every day, more than I'd like, I assure you. And I will continue to do that to ensure that the investment that the city has already made in the form of CIP funds, the investment of my months of time applying for the Heritage Fund grant, you know, will pay off in terms of preserving this very unique and rehabilitating this very unique one-of-a-kind structure. So anyway, I just wanted to add that as well.
Sure, thank you. And I'll just want to add, and I do want to make sure that I did not intend that to come across as a direct statement on your role in this. And I also would, this was overshadowing the fact that your application got the grant funding, which is fabulous. That was the first part of your presentation. Then we skipped over to this. It's kind of like a, oscillating wildly from this way to the back, so I guess we should back up then and say, first of all, thank you for the application. So you got the money, which is fantastic because that is a very positive thing. So all I'll say is, I've never been involved in development review like the vice chair has and what you're privy to. So I'll just trust that you guys are right, that this is an opportunity. The only thing I will reinforce in my comments is that similar to some of these other things, and I've only been on this commission for 2 years, it just seems like as a body who is intended to be the advisory board, so to speak, for the city, this isn't, and excuse me for saying 135 Bonita Way, which is a fairly average, it's lots of houses similar to that. This is a one-of-a-kind structure.
Oh, yeah.
From the very beginnings of the city. So it's not like this is just like, oh yeah, don't worry about it, kind of thing. No, this is like next to the Hayden House and the flour mill. This is about the oldest structure there is in Tempe. So
it is, yeah.
So that's why to me this is a little jarring, and it's just also a little bit, frankly offensive that the city or whoever is involved in making these decisions has thought, well, we're just going to go ahead and do all this, and I'm glad you got the wording in there, and hopefully it will work out. But I'm just trying to express that, it's not your average everyday historic building we're talking about here. It's a very important structure. So I feel like there should have been some more thought put into this before someone just fast-tracked the whole deal. And then now we're finding out about it, and it's just kind of like we just, okay, well, I guess hopefully it'll work out. So
yeah, I understand. No, Chair, I understand your position, and I don't take your comments personally. I know that you're directing your comments to the city as an entity, and I happen to be sitting here representing the city. That's just how it works. I get it. But so don't worry about that, please. But I appreciate your comments, and I definitely understand where you're coming from. So.
All right. Well, very well. I'm sure that you will update us as this develops further.
I will.
And, any other questions by commissioners? Yes.
So where is it in the process right now? Like in this RFQ process, it's deadlines or reviewing or awarded or? Oh, sorry.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, so there was one response to the RFQ, which is not surprising because nobody wants to buy that sliver of a property that you can't really probably do too much with. So yeah, so the only respondent was First and Farmer LLC, and that was to be expected. And so the city is. A committee, reviewed those applications. I was on that review committee. Had some, questions. Talked to the developer. Had a meeting with the developer, and now I think I provided you with that date, and I can't remember it, but it's going to be moving to a council meeting very soon here in this month actually to request council approval essentially to work on entering into a development agreement with that developer to redevelop those two combined parcels. So that's kind of where we're at.
So in the proposal, I guess it's not open to public, but they submitted like their project concept or their approach. What did they say about this house? How they going to utilize?
Yeah, well, there was frankly, one of the things we kind of had to nail down was just, and I don't know that I can talk about specifics of the consideration process, but I can say that there was definitely consideration by the developer to the preservation of the home. which I wanted some additional clarification on, which we did receive. And they're, for example, they're aware that there's a facade conservation easement requirement. You know, they said, okay, we understand that. We understand that we're going to be required to do that. And, you know, in terms of the actual plans, it's, I mean, they haven't even, you know, they're not far enough along in the process to really have like site plans or anything like that. So it's still very, very early at this point. Like I said, there has been talk, you know, of you know, high-rise living space there, but you know, and we're still far away from getting kind of specifics of what they're actually, you know, going to be able to do at the site, and that'll be again worked out via the development agreement as well. So this is just kind of the first stage of it. Development agreement is really where you hammer out, you know, all the details and, you know, dot your I's and cross your T's. And I'll definitely be involved in that process, just like I was involved with the ongoing development agreement for Hayden Flour Mill, which I was going to talk about in a little bit. But, you know, I was commenting on the specific deal points related to historic preservation and that type of thing. So I'll play the same role for this as well. So I've got eyes on it, and you know, I'm fiercely committed to advancing the HPO perspective of we've got to preserve, we've got to rehabilitate, because this is, as I feel like I say ad nauseum in various memos and various gatherings, you know, this to echo Chair Woodson, this is a very unique property. It's just, you know, it's like how many buildings from this age do we have? Very little. How many surviving buildings that tell the story of Mexican and Mexican American, the Mexican and Mexican American presidents in Tempe do we have? Very few. So yeah, it's a vital building to preserve for sure. So that's what I'm going to be have been and will continue to advocate for. And I think that we have that built into the RFQ and will be built into the development agreement as well.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Any other? One more question?
This is Commissioner Montero. I just have one comment, you know, and it's nothing that hasn't already been said, but my first thought when I heard this was, you know, how can we be sure that they will go forward with the preservation of the house? So you said through a development agreement. So you know, that's good to know. And I look forward to seeing that when that happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And
Chair Woodson.
Vice Chair, sorry, Commissioner Larson.
Go ahead.
I've got a handful of questions and comments, if I may. Proceed. What's the status of the development agreement? Have you started drafting that yet or no?
No, not yet.
Can this commission be involved and provide input as to the terms of that development agreement before it's finalized and when it's still in negotiations?
I can certainly ask that and make that suggestion. Yeah, I will look into that, because I think that if I'll note the commission's desire to do that.
Absolutely. I think the commission should see drafts of that before it's finalized and have the opportunity to provide input on the terms of that development agreement, because it's going to be critical in actually preserving this property.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
I'm concerned about the thought of building a high-rise residential structure on this particular piece, because the Gonzalez Martinez house appears to be crumbling adobe brick. And to construct a high-rise will require a substantial amount of groundwork very close to the foundation of the home, such that I'm not an expert on the integrity of adobe bricks, but it could just fall down. It seems it's so fragile. And I noticed in the description of the site section of the RFQ, there's a substantial amount of discussion on the idea of actually relocating the Gonzalez Martinez house. So my question is the developer considering that?
I think that was a discussion early on, even before the RFQ went out. My opinion was asked, was solicited. You know, could it be possible to move the Gonzalez Martinez house off-site somewhere else? And I was very emphatic in saying no, for a couple of reasons. First, it would just be prohibitively expensive to take it apart brick by brick, especially when a lot of that is crumbling brick, adobe brick, and then put it back together again. You know, the Sandra Day did that with the Sandra Day O'Connor house, and that was a multi-million-dollar project. The other thing too is just that it would completely destroy the historic integrity of the home in, you know, in terms of its setting, its association. You know, all those kind of National Register markers that have to do with not just the building itself, but the context in which it sits in. So yeah, I was very strongly, you know, urged that not to be the case, and that, you know, that is no longer under consideration. So, which is, yeah, so that's not going to happen.
So, okay, so the developer is not considering
No.
disassembling, moving,
No.
and then reassembling the Gonzalez Martinez house?
No, it has to be, where are you seeing that? You're seeing that in the RFQ?
In section 3, description of the site, most particularly paragraph 2, it's the most lengthy paragraph in section 3 of the RFQ. There's substantial discussion on relocating the home.
Okay. Yeah, no, the home is going to have to be preserved in place.
Okay, this paragraph in particular makes it look like it's possible for them to disassemble, relocate, and reassemble somewhere else, and that the developer may have the option to actually do that.
Okay, yeah, no, I don't believe that. That's not on the table. So there's been no further discussion of that.
Okay,
So,
and why was the RFQ fast-tracked?
it's not, you know, it's not really something that I'm privy to.
Okay.
That's not an HPO decision. So.
You just,
But and I'm not withholding information from you. I honestly don't.
You just don't know?
I honestly don't know. Yeah,
Okay.
I believe there's just a desire to move forward quickly on this. I think that certainly there's a desire on the part of the developer. So that could have something to do with it. But honestly, I don't have an answer for you on that, for why it moved that quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Vice Chair.
2 questions. Getting back to the grant, what's the timetable for the grant? And are we really talking about $258,336 we're working with right now?
Oh, you mean total for the, well, first of all, so timetable for the grant, work on the project, which they consider work on the project to include, you know, hiring a team to, you know, help to rehabilitate the building, has to occur within 6 months of signing the agreement, which I just signed the agreement a few days ago. Within 18 months of signing the agreement, construction work, so rehabilitation, repair work, would have to begin on the house. And then technically, the project has to be complete within 3 years. However, I did get word from SHPO that can be extended if necessary. The question about how much money the city currently has allocated to this, it's actually more. So the city had some years back allocated a little over $108,000 to assist in the stabilization of the Adobe. We still have that money, so that money is still in city coffers waiting to be used. And I actually, in speaking with Reggie McKay of Adobe Technology, who is, many of you know, is kind of the Adobe, historic Adobe guy, in the area. He said it's probably going to cost a little bit more, closer to about $150,000. So I did request, and we don't know if this has been approved yet, but I did request an additional $50,000 in CIP funding to go along with that. So last year, the city allocated also in CIP funding $200,000, anticipating that to act as a match for what they thought would be potentially a $300,000 Heritage Fund, Historic Preservation Fund grant. Unfortunately, the state only allocated half of what it did last year for the Heritage Fund. So what we received, the $150,000 award, was the maximum award. So there is that. So you put that $200,000 in CIP funding to match the Heritage Fund grant, along with the Heritage Fund grant, you're up to $350, right? Yes. And then a little over $450 when you include the rehabilitation, the stabilization dollars. So, we'd be up to about, if we got that additional $50,000 in stabilization funding, the city would be up to about $500,000 that it had at its disposal, just itself, to contribute toward that rehabilitation. So I think it would probably cost more, though. So that's where the developer would potentially, come in to, to assist in that process. In the development agreement would be written in such a way that the developer would be, in charge of having to facilitate that rehabilitation, obviously in consultation with HPC and HPO. But that money is there, and the money is, constitutes I think, a very strong commitment on the part of the city to preserve this home. It doesn't make any sense for the city to have, allocate all this money and then just at the end of the day be like, well, yeah, just tear it down, And I think everybody's on the same, developer and the city are on the same page about that. So.
One final question.
Yeah.
And you may not know, has the developer closed with the state on the land? Does the developer currently own the land?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, I believe
so
they
this
currently.
Isn't an option to purchase or anything?
No, they do own it. Yeah, they do own it.
Good.
Yeah, in fact, I remember that coming up specifically. They said it's not, we don't have an option. We actually own the land. And so that was kind of a statement of their commitment to, to redevelop this property.
All right.
Anybody have any other questions? Or?
Anything further? Okay, a little bit more than you were expecting, I get.
Oh, well, I never know what to expect, so just expect the unexpected. So.
Well, I think I'd speak for all of us and just emphasizing that we would really desire to be updated on this, at the earliest possible time, since it sounds like this is moving fast. And I have no doubt you will do what you're already doing, which we appreciate. So just please just keep us posted, and
I will.
Hopefully the best case scenario will come through, and we'll, hope goes, a little bit away, but we sometimes have to be a little more, demanding in what we require. But it does sound like I agree with you that, the indications have been that the city desires to keep this property preserved, and that's a good sign. And it's just, all this happening so quickly is a little unnerving from my point of view. So
Sure.
thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
All right, moving on then to the next item, discussion of possible HPC participation in the 2023 Hayden's Ferry Days Festival.
Yeah, okay, so a little bit of lighter topic here. So the Hayden's Ferry Days Festival is a, annual event in Tempe, kind of celebrating a variety of things, but obviously from that name, celebrating Tempe's early history. And this year, there's going to be part of that event held on Sunday, March 5th from noon until 4 p.m. At the Tempe History Museum, which is, as you know, located at 809 East Southern Avenue. And so the organizers, and we actually have Mr. Vic Linoff on the line here, if you have kind of specific questions about the event. But the organizers have asked the HPC if it might be interested in participating, so setting up a table and potentially kind of discussing with visitors, whatever commissioners would like to talk to them about. That's one of the things we want to consider tonight. One, whether the HPC is interested in participating at this event, and two, what participation would look like, and three, who's willing to volunteer to take shifts. And I've already spoken privately with a couple of you who would be willing to do that. So what I would see potentially just as, one thought about what participation would look like. So, you'd have a table set up. I could potentially pull together some images or even plans of like ongoing, developments that are of a historic nature in the city. And then the, commission members could engage members of the public in discussions surrounding these particular projects or historic preservation in Tempe and more broadly. But that's just a suggestion. The commissioners, I think, if you did participate, probably working in pairs. So for, a couple of commissioners working from, say, 12 to 2, and then maybe from 2 to 4 at the table, another set of commissioners would be fine. So I know that Chair Woodson and Vice Chair Fackler indicated that they would potentially be available. I know there's a couple of you who have conflicts who wouldn't be available. So I just wanted to kind of open, with obviously the chair's approval, open it up for discussion just to talk about whether this is something that the commission would like to participate in. And if not, that's perfectly fine. And just kind of, help to maybe plan that a little bit and move it forward if you all do decide to participate.
Yeah, thank you for the overview. I'd like to open it up to comment or questions. Anyone have any?
Mr. Chair,
Vice Chair.
I like the idea of the interactive, throw some plans on the table. We've got a number of fairly interesting projects, large scale, make significant changes in the community, not the least of which is Hayden Flour Mill.
I thought about that one, yeah.
If, give them some sort of, as much as we can, an update of where that stands. People would be interested in that. The Ash Avenue Bridge Approach Project, again, significant project as far as interaction between the historic developers and the city on that project. And then I'm sure we've got a couple of smaller scale projects. I was thinking that one, what was it, the Butler House, where the city,
Oh, right. Yeah.
the property got subdivided so that back of the property could be developed, the front of the property preserved. There might be those who are interested in that type of thing. The purpose of the facade preservation easement. So,
by the way, I just want to mention, not to sidetrack you there, but Yeah, I've been speaking actually with someone who was under contract on that house who seems very interested in the historic aspects of the home and is looking to, make sure that he's, preserving them. So he's been talking with me a lot via email. So that's an encouraging sign that we, have a potential buyer there who,
Be a
is
great
looking
update.
to preserve it. Yeah.
You mean for the Butler House?
For the Butler House, yes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
great.
yeah, for the Butler House. So, sorry about that. I just want to mention that because I forgot about.
And there may be others that, you
Mm-hmm.
could put on the table and we could speak to.
Yeah, those are good suggestions.
So I guess, yeah, we're basically just looking to see if anyone else would be able to volunteer a couple of hours of time. I think, what is it, 12 to 4? So
12 to 4, yeah.
think
So you really just,
Dave and I have already got one slot, I guess, so probably just
yeah,
need
two
more.
more commissioners would probably do it, I think that would be fine.
So I guess, unless you want to go around and put thumb screws on people right now, we could just say coordinate.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we don't have to. That's true. We don't have to pass a motion or figure it out right now. But we do need to. We will need to probably decide that within, I would say, the next week, because if I need to, get the print shop to make graphics and things like that to have available, they'll need a little bit of time to do that. So yeah, I'll follow up with you in the coming week. Let's put it that way. Commissioners, I'm saying that to the commissioner, and we'll figure that out.
This is Commissioner Montero. I'd be willing to take a shift, but as long as there's some format for me to follow, I don't have any ideas here, but I would be willing to help out and take a shift.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner
Thank
Montero.
you. All right, well, I suspect we'll be able to cover the slots. I mean, it's only 4 hours, so.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good time for you all. So yeah. So anyway, if anyone decides that they do want to participate, you can feel free to let me know, and if not, I'll be following up with you to confirm. So thank you for considering, and thank you particularly Vice Chair Fackler for those suggestions.
Excellent. Unless there's anything else on that, we'll just move on. Item 7, Chair and Staff Updates. I don't have any updates, so I'll turn it over to you.
I have several updates. Talk to you first about Watson's Flowers. So the Watson's Flower Building, not much has changed in the past couple of months. Since we had that meeting where we discussed potential options for the building. I did want to tell you though, I did meet on the site with Susan Lawson. Susan Lawson is the SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office architect, back in December. She had not been to the site before, and since SHPO is going to be having to make a determination of eligibility in terms of whether the property is eligible for the National Register, she wanted to kind of get a kind of a quick look at it. Mark Vinson, who we obviously saw here this evening, he's been contracted by Commonwealth Heritage Group, on-call cultural resource management firm in the city, to update the historic property inventory forms for the Watson's Flower Building. And those forms are important because that's what SHPO actually uses to make that determination of eligibility. So Mr. Vinson had recently visited the property for additional analysis. And so the determination of eligibility is a requirement of the Section 106 process. And since this is a site that the city has set aside to, potentially be part of its affordable housing project along and near Ash Avenue, it falls under that section 106 process. So what I'm saying is that that's kind of where we're at now. Like in terms of like, are there redevelopment plans for the site? Has there been any more discussion of what's gonna, of what the owner plans to do with that building? No, there's nothing, nothing more that I've been informed about in terms of plans for that. But so we're kind of looking for that determination of eligibility, which I'm assuming should come fairly soon once those plans are submitted. But I think Mr. Benson has a few more things to do before he submits those forms to the State Historic Preservation Office. So, does anybody have any questions about that?
No questions, but just remind the commission, is the parcel that's located on, that's, part of this proposed redevelopment, is that the one that's part of the 3 parcels that's been recently, there was another hearing about this with the overall Tempe, I'm trying to remember if this is the same project. There's some other parcels off Apache Boulevard that are further west. I'm just trying to remember, was this one of those parcels, or is that a different
No,
project?
I think there was some other parcels, like an old Food City lot that had been recently been added to, that the city had purchased to incorporate into this project. So no, that's not one of those parcels.
Oh,
so
all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Proceed, please.
Okay. Next update on the Hayden Flour Mill. So, and I kind of mentioned this a little bit. So, I did provide feedback on the city's proposed deal points for the development agreement with Venue and Sunbelt. Those are the 2 collaborating developers for the silo and the mill redevelopment, which of course is located at 119 South Mill. As expected, based on the presentation you heard from Venue Sunbelt, that was last April. What they're planning to do is to, in terms of historic preservation, is to see about listing it, facilitating listing of the Hayden Flour Mill and silos in the National Register. So it's not nationally listed at this point. It's only locally designated. They have and will continue to consult with area tribes, the 4 southern tribes, on trailhead restoration and view sheds associated with the redevelopment, to some extent redevelopment of the mill itself, but more so, in regard to any new structures that they are planning to build onto the site to make that redevelopment project kind of commercially viable. They're looking to restore building elevations on the mill to the original form as much as possible. They are looking to really only minimally intervene in updating the mill itself for commercial use. So I was recently over there last week, and they had a subcontractor with Venue and a subcontractor. They were going through and kind of inventorying the various equipment in the building, and there's a lot of mill equipment in that building, old mill equipment, and they're looking to try to they're going to take it out and try to repurpose a good amount of it, as much as they can, for the redevelopment project, and then define good homes, museums, other kind of interested individuals who would want some, to try to refurbish some old mill equipment. But my point is that they're trying to utilize as much as they can, of the mill, even the interior as it was. They're going to keep the safe that's in there, a whole host of other things. And then the new structures that I mentioned are going to be subordinate in height and scale to both the mill and the silos, and just as important, to Tempe Butte as well, to make sure that the Butte is not being in any way challenged in terms of view sheds. So I guess a question that I assume I know the answer to this. I assume the commission would like an opportunity to weigh in, perhaps have a presentation from the developer, maybe just prior to the development agreement being finalized, to just kind of walk through the plan for the project at this point?
I would think definitely.
Yeah, okay.
And is this the same developer that's still on board from that last meeting that we had?
Yes, it's always a good question when you're dealing with the Hayden Flour Mill, because you never, it does change, it has changed over the years, the developer many times. But yeah, this developer is still on board, Venue Sunbelt, so I will reach out to them and make that request of them, for them to come back and provide an update, because yeah, they've definitely, refined things. The presentation you received in April, was just a very kind of, very good, but very general presentation, because they were at that point still just kind of listening to stakeholders, in the city, as well as tribal governments and other, communities. And at this point, they've begun to kind of put the pieces together. So I think you'll be interested to learn what they have to say. So I'll work on getting them to come back soon here, perhaps even next month if they're available. So.
Zach, could that presentation, or maybe a different presentation from the attorney's office, include a Dill Points outline? I'm not talking super detailed or anything like that, but just the basic deal points that might point to the historic preservation.
Okay, sure. I can request that as well.
Very good. Yeah, I think we would look forward to hearing about that.
Okay. All right. Next thing I wanted to mention is just a reminder of the upcoming Tempe neighborhood celebration. There is this year there's a series of awards, and one of them this year is an HP, or a Historic Preservation Award, which I've emailed you about in the past. This award and the others was advertised on the city website and social media. I also let the Tempe Historic Preservation Foundation know about it and encourage their members to submit nominations as well. The commission, you commissioners are certainly free to nominate worthy individuals or projects as you see fit. The nominations do close, though, a week from today, so February 15th. If we do have any nominations, we do have an ad hoc planning committee composed of a couple people in the planning department, Steve Abrahamson, a principal planner, also planner Robbie Aaron, who you obviously know, former interim HPO, and myself will meet to actually make those selections. I will say, I don't want you to feel, and I've actually talked with the folks in the neighborhood folks with the city. Feel free to make nominations, but make sure if you do that, I want to make sure that they're good. Good nominations. Don't feel obligated just to make a nomination, just to make one, or feel like we have to award, present this award. We don't. So I'd much prefer to have no nominations than subpar nominations. And I say that with some humility because currently we have no nominations. So I realize that might be an actuality. So just a couple of other things before I'll open it up to you if you have any questions. The 2023 neighborhood celebration event date is Saturday, April 1st. The event will run from 8:30 to 10:30 in the morning, with the awards ceremony starting at 9 a.m. And this is would be a very informal event. So the neighborhood services staff has talked to me and asked me to encourage you all as historic preservation commissioners to attend if you would like, and they're encouraging all members of other boards and commissions to attend as well. So, even if there is no HP award, I certainly encourage you to attend this just to represent the commission and just, historic preservation in Tempe, and just also just to support the other nominees and award winners as well. So anyway, again, not putting you on the spot now to ask you if you have any nominations, but just remember you do have a week to submit those nominations. And I've emailed you in the past and provided you with a link to that information. Let me know if you need that information again. I'll be happy to resend that to you. So.
Thank you. I'm sorry, you said you did send the link before?
I did. Yeah, I did. And
Oh, okay.
I can. I can just resend it to the.
Yeah, I think I
It's
might
fine. Yeah, it's
remember that.
good to remind.
And is it, this is for a neighborhood event, so are the awards, the nominees supposed to be for neighborhood projects, or could it be any project in Tempe?
It could be any project. Yeah, it doesn't have to be, something that's in a historic district, for example, a residential historic district. It could be any type of project. It can honor a project. It can also honor a person, and the nomination form kind of lays this out. But for someone who's done a lot in the last year, or not even the last year, but just collectively for historic preservation in Tempe, could be a nominee potentially. The form, there's some stuff you got to fill out and, make the case, but it's not terribly onerous process, to nominate someone or, a project. So, I encourage you to, if you have some good ideas, feel free to send those nominations. Okay, and then one last one. I know there's a lot of announcements here. So we do have some members with terms expiring on March 31st. And so I'll just name them here. So it's Jim Garrison. Commissioner Garrison will be rotating off because he is coming to the conclusion of his second consecutive term. The same goes for Commissioner Chris Garrity. And then Commissioner Liz Gilbert has served one term, but is declining to serve a second term. So she will be rotating off of the commission as well. Those three individuals are all at-large members. Okay, so the whole at-large contingent will be rotating off of Historic Preservation Commission at the end of March. Now, Commissioner Raylan Williams was also reaching the end of her first partial term as the Four Southern Tribes Cultural Resource Working Group representative. She has, with their approval, she has agreed to serve another term, so we thank her for that. Chair Woodson is also completing his first partial term, so he has also agreed to serve another term. And just to clarify, Commissioner Williams and Commissioner Woodson would be starting their first full terms on the commission. So at the end of 3 years in 2026, you all would then have the option, if you decide, and again with council approval, to serve a final 3-year term. Okay, and so just as a reminder, Chair Woodson is a professional member in the archaeology classification. Okay, so we need to find 3 at-large replacements. So I just want to tell you a little bit about the process. So I've been working with the city clerk's office, as well as one of our city's public information officers to solicit nominations for new members. Chair Woodson and I have been going through the nominations, and I think you'd agree, we had some pretty good candidates, yeah. So I do want to say that, having 3 members and all 3 at-large members rotate off the committee at the commission at the same time is not really ideal, because you all are a 9-member commission, and so that's a third of the membership. So what I'm doing, kind of after consulting with Ryan LeVake in planning, as well as the city clerk's office, is I'm going to be putting forward a resolution at the March 2nd regular meeting of City Council to request that the new at-large members serve staggered terms. So normally they would be serving 3-year terms in their first term. However, if that were to happen, we're just going to be back in the same situation we were again in 3 or 6 years, where you have all those at-large members rotating off at the same time potentially. So if one of those members serves 1 year, another member serves 2 years, and another member serves 3 years, then things will work out so that no more than next year and the year after that and the year after that, no more than 2 members of the commission will have their terms expire. So we won't have to replace more than 2 members. That'll correct the term expiration imbalance for now. And those new members who would be serving those 1 or 2 year terms, just to be clear, would still be allowed to be considered to serve 2 additional, not unlike Chair Woodson and Commissioner Williams, 2 additional full 3-year terms. So they're not getting shorted. In fact, they actually potentially have the opportunity to serve, a little bit longer. And just in the future, I'm going to be writing a code text amendment for giving authority to the HPO and the city clerk's office to initiate this kind of staggering process to occur without council action in case it happens again. And sometimes the reason this happens is because some people might resign their commission early, something like that. That's usually the case. And so things just get a little, shall we say, wonky, in terms of the when people are rotating off. But anyway, that should correct the problem permanently. And so I'll be working on that council item coming up here shortly. So anyway, a lot of detail, probably more than you wanted, but there you go. Any questions about that process? And that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you. And yeah, just briefly, I'll echo that. Yeah, there's some very good applicants, I think. So I think we'll be pleased with the additions.
Very fortunate.
Assuming they accept and pass their background check.
Yeah, fingers crossed. That's right.
Okay. If that's all, then we'll move on to.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair. I just have one other announcement. I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention, and this is unfortunate, but not unexpected. So I mentioned last time that there would have been a new demolition permit put on the historic eligible Marriott House. You see here depicted from 1935. So I did reach out to the new owner of that house. They did elect to. I did suggest some alternatives. A, don't demolish the house. B, can we document it in some way, or at least C, take photos of it. They did allow us Robbie, Aaron, and I to come onto the property and photograph the exterior of the home, and also to come inside and photograph the interior of the home. It's actually pretty interesting because speaking of basements, this home from 1935, it has a basement, or had a basement. So kind of unusual. We weren't actually, I wasn't aware of that until actually being, in the property. But they did demolish it, and so that if you drive past that site now on Roosevelt, you'll see an empty lot there with a lot of weeds in it. But that'll be redeveloped, I believe, to build some townhouses. Which is happening a lot in the downtown area. But I was glad at least we were able to document it, photographically. So it was nice of the owner to allow us to do that. So we appreciated that. But saddened that the building was demolished. So just wanted to let you know that happened though.
Well, thank you for the update. Yeah, I recall that coming up before, and that's unfortunate that they did make that decision, but we appreciate you making the efforts. And as we all know, private property owners are not required to redevelop and reuse. So You know, obviously it would be nice if the city or society in general could engender more of a spirit of, you know, historic preservation, but, you know, there's only so much we can do.
Indeed.
All right. Anything further on updates? No?
I don't have any further staff announcements for this
Okay.
item. Oh, yeah, or for that, or for this, so.
Okay. All right, well then, item 8, current events announcements, future agenda items. I have one brief announcement just to one of the projects that my department's been involved with City of Phoenix and City of Tempe over the last few years are developing some educational signage about traditional Akimel Autumn homeland information, particularly about geography. And one of the signs that was developed is about Tempe Butte, and the sign has now been installed at the streetcar stop on Rio Salado, just east of Mill Avenue. So there's a streetcar stop there on the north side of Tempe Butte. If you're ever over that way, I encourage you to stop and just kind of look at the sign. It talks about the mountain and the traditional name for it and some stories about it. It's really quite nice. It looks good, and it's got a, you know, you're looking at the butte from that side. It's a really good opportunity. And there's some other areas that these signs, similar signs, have been installed, like at South Mountain Park, at Piestewa Peak, at the trailhead there, and also at the South Mountain Educational Center in Phoenix. So just want to bring that up, some kind of little efforts that we've tried to make over the last few years to bring some educational signage and literature out there. And I don't think I have anything else. Does any other commissioners have any announcements? And any staff announcements?
Yes, I do have one. You just jogged my memory thinking of that commemorative plaque. So for several months, I've been working with various people in the city to put together text for, and then also to design a plaque that will be going up once it's completed, and there's still probably several weeks off before it's completed, on the old Mill Avenue Bridge to commemorate, in part the bridge, but to primarily commemorate the long-serving state bridge engineer named Ralph Hoffman, who designed Tempe Bridge, or not Tempe Bridge rather, but the old Mill Avenue Bridge, as well as many other bridges throughout the state in the early 20th century. The city was approached by, I believe actually ADOT was approached at first and then reached out to the city by Mr. Hoffman's granddaughter. His daughter, her mother is still living as well, and is also, was interested in commemorating Mr. Hoffman's, myriad contributions to bridge building, and in this case to Tempe. And so the city ultimately allotted some money to pay for a plaque. I worked on the text, and then in collaboration with Jared Smith at the Tempe History Museum and Chris Baxter, one of our public information officers, we refined that text and ran it by the granddaughter, and she approved it as well. So yeah, we're very excited about that. I think, again, talking about, just a little bit of education that the many folks who use the old Mill Avenue Bridge will be able to see when they walk past. It'll be there, like I said, hard to say when, but there's been some delays, I'll say that. But hopefully for the next couple months, it'll be installed, and at some point we'll have a ceremony, and maybe not for the actual installation of the plaque, but to provide a smaller version, kind of a version of the plaque to the family themselves. And that ceremony, again, to be determined the date, but I'll be sure when we know that to inform you all and to, warmly invite you to come out. So.
Chair.
Because
Yes.
it's already late night, I might as well take one more minute, right?
Yes, exactly.
Just changing the subject. The Tempe Tomorrow General Plan is ongoing very expeditiously and also busily. We probably contacted, in terms of different meetings, more than 2,000 people already and gotten a lot of input. And the staff is now simultaneously working with the community working group, which is like a council-appointed board, and also the technical advisory group, and our vice chair is a member of that. And so we also are beginning to do a draft into that. And then we expect to have a draft of the general plan in sometime in May. You will all have an opportunity to look at that. We'll make sure that you will get a copy. There's a significant HP portion in the general plan as always, both in the appendices with a lot of details and mapping, and also as an element into the general plan that Jack and everyone are very wisely contributing to. So you'll have a chance to look at it. I just wanted to take 1 minute to brief you on that. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you for the update. Okay. Last call for announcements. Hearing none, then I guess I'll ask for a motion to adjourn if we need. Actually, I think I could just do that, so we'll just.
You can just
adjourn
do
the
it
meeting.
yourself,
Yes, it's,
unilaterally do it. Yeah.
8:09 PM. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend, and don't get lost in the Super Bowl traffic.